The family of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza will be fetching his remains from the mortuary, which will then be taken to his Barberton home this afternoon. Mabuza will be laid to rest tomorrow after a Category 2 state funeral, which will be followed by a private burial. The former Mpumalanga Premier died last Thursday at a Johannesburg hospital. He was 64 years old. Newzroom Afrika Ziyanda Ngcobo will be following the cortege from the mortuary in Bombela this afternoon. She joins us now live. Ziyanda, good afternoon to you. This is all part of the ritual in the build-up to someone being laid to rest.
That's right, Michelle, and the family of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza is already making their way here to the mortuary, where they will be fetching his remains and conducting the burial rites as per the Mabuza family. 2 o'clock is when we're told that the family will then leave where we are here in Bombela, bound for Barberton, where he will stay overnight with the family. And then, of course, that state funeral Category 2 to be undertaken at the Bergflam school, where, of course, there will be that state funeral that is undertaken. And then a very small private burial to be undertaken. You'll recall that one of his last wishes was that he be buried on his farm in Barberton. And so, the state has made arrangements according to that. So any moment from now, the family is due to arrive. We're told the motorcade has already left Barberton.
And then, of course, Ziyanda, there will be time that the family gets to spend with his remains, and they will be in the family home overnight as those burial preparations continue.
That's right, Michelle. Much like with any other family, the family will get an opportunity to have their final goodbyes. You'll know that for most of tomorrow, the state would have taken over everything that takes place. And of course, the finalizing of issues such as the program and the likes will likely take place overnight. But certainly a moment for the family, which has been welcoming scores of mourners and those paying their condolences to them, making their way to the Barberton home. So a private moment for them to see him for the last time, to say their final goodbyes, and to have him also go back home for one last time before being laid to rest sometime tomorrow afternoon.
Ziyanda, and yesterday we saw a range of memorial services, 3 of them in fact, one in Mayflower, Hazyview and in Middelburg, to try and get the province of Mpumalanga give the province an opportunity, all corners of the province, to pay their respects. Senior ANC officials were there. The Deputy President was in Hazyview along with David Mabuza's family, and he gave the official address on behalf of the ANC. The President himself, Ziyanda, has a very busy schedule, even from today, speaking at the Union Buildings, up until Sunday, when he's meant to address the nation on the issue of corruption in the police. But the President will most certainly be attending the funeral service of the former Deputy President.
Certainly, and I mean, lots has been said about David Mabuza, the man. We've been talking about, David Dabede Mabuza, the cat with 9 lives, the man who had a very different sort of persona here in Mpumalanga. Some remember him as someone to be feared in the province, to be well respected. Others saying that he's done a lot since being in the first cabinet of Mpumalanga here since 1994, being the first education MSc under Matthews Posa, who was the premier, and the ANC really closing rank in terms of saying, well, there's no perfect person, Michelle, and wanting to remember all the positive and the good that he has done. So residents of Mpumalanga from all corners of the province are expected to make their way to the venue where the state funeral will be held, and this is where they'll be able to pay their tributes. Lots of talk about how he empowered many young people to complete their education, even some NEC members of the ANC have reflected such that he actually put them through a tertiary education. So many are thanking him. Refilum Twenitipane is saying that she's the chairperson of the NCOP because of the recommendation of the likes of David Mabuza as well. So there'll be lots more tributes coming in. But for this afternoon, it's mainly going to be about the family, them actually fetching him from this mortuary behind me. And I'll just show you a little bit actually of what's happening. Michelle, of course, is still quiet, but there is a red carpet here. We expect that motorcade to arrive. And as I mentioned, the family will, at least for this part, and until tomorrow morning, of course, be in charge of the taking care of his mortal remains and being able to conduct according to their family burial rites, and then the state takes over from tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Ziyanda. There will, of course, be a time for reflection, as there always is, particularly when it's someone who held such a prominent position in the country of deputy president. David Mabuza was deputy president during one of the most difficult times in South Africa and around the world, and that was during COVID-19. And one of the big criticisms was that he was largely nowhere to be seen during that time. We know that he was always quite concerned for his health. But when we think about, what was the big thing we can remember David Mabuza for in his position as Deputy President, is that perhaps a difficult question to answer?
It is for some and it isn't for others, and such is the complexity of the man that is David Mabuza. For some, they'll say, actually, we can't even tell you what he did when he was deputy president, but maybe perhaps there's more to point to when he was Mpumalanga Premier, for an example. And you're right. I mean, this was even an issue that was spoken about in Parliament. At the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a good 8 to 11 months where no one knew where David Mabuza was. We understood that he was in and out of Russia. In fact, even recently, he had actually just returned from Russia towards the end of June when he suddenly experienced a shortness of breath last Thursday and died in an emergency room whilst they were still trying to stabilize him. But for those who've been in contact with him, they had a sense that, in fact, he was stronger than he's been in the last decade or so, as we know that he's been battling ill health for quite some time. So this is why, for many, they say that this passing of Mabuza was a shock to them. But in terms of the reflections, I can tell you, Michelle, that, in fact, the fact that there wasn't an official memorial that was hosted by the government, some do feel some type of way about this because they feel that it has not given those who would have worked with him in the government an opportunity to memorialize him in terms of those who worked with him in Sudan. I mean, I was speaking to one official who said, we basically camped in Sudan for about 4 months, and we know that that conflict is always never ending in that part of our continent, others from SANEC. And so you ask about what has he done, is it a difficult question to answer? I'd say yes and no, depending who you are and from what vantage point you're speaking from.
Yeah, certainly. So the earlier communication we got, Ziyanda, was that the family would be arriving at the morgue where you are at 1 o'clock, and then the cortege would then leave the morgue around 2 p.m. Is that still the case, or have those timelines changed?
Well, as I said at the start of my crossing, indeed, the family has already left the Barberton home. The VIP motorcade is already making its way. It's about 33 kilometers away from where we are right now. But of course, there's been a lot of buildup of traffic as well, heading towards Mabuza's home. But we understand that the family is already en route. They'll go into the venue behind me and do whatever it is that they they need to do. And then 2 o'clock is when we anticipate then that the cortege will take the mortal remains of David Mabuza to his home, where the family will be able to spend one last night with him before his final burial tomorrow in a private ceremony at his final resting place on his Barberton farm.
Thanks for outlining that for us again. Ziyanda Ngcobo is live to us there in Bombela. And of course, once we have that live picture for you, we'll bring it to you live here on 405.